Today's guest is living proof that the man who refuses to quit can never be stopped. I want everyone to hear this amazing story.
So growing up, I had a beautiful life, but my parents were battling addiction. And as I got older, I realized they were a mess. And, there started being incidents at home where I saw my mother overdose. I saw my parents fight. The cops would come. All these bad things started happening. And my world went from a beautiful world where the sun was shining to a dark and gloomy world. The only thing that helped me at that time to forget about my problems was smoking, drinking, taking pills. All my friends, my girlfriend at the time, everybody, they thought my life was over and they just distanced themselves from me. And that was the moment I realized I had to fight and I had to be the one to rebuild my life. No one was going to come to rescue me. I started working out every day. And at first it was just to push through that irritable feeling I was having, that anger, that angst. And then eventually, I elevated beyond that. And then I was building myself up. I was proud of myself. I started doing it daily. So I had discipline. And then over time, confidence.
This is Sparta!
Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick. And I believe it was Thomas Edison who said, our greatest weakness lies in giving up. Today's guest is living proof that the man who refuses to quit can never be stopped. So, for those of you that have followed Spartan Leadership for a long time, you know that I like to bring on guests that have gone through some shit and overcome some shit and built an amazing life to where they are today. And today's guest is very much that. Founder and CEO of Unstoppable. How do you do this? Hashtag 365 motherfucker? Or is it, how do we
It's a long title. Yeah. I'm always curious to see how people pronounce it. Unstoppable hashtag 365 MFR.
All right. Got it. And we'll get into that a little bit. Author, motivational speaker, husband, and father of three. Please join me in welcoming Sean Crane. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me. I love how, I just want to share this real quick too, because it's on my mind. I love how you said the man who refuses to quit cannot be stopped in that quote by Thomas Edison. Because just this morning, I was doing cardio and I hurt my back pretty bad, doing squats last week. You know how it is when you're hurt and you can't move your body, It kind of messes with you. So I got to do cardio today. I was so grateful. And I always listen to a different type of music when I do cardio. I listen to Adele because, man, it takes me way back to when I was actually in county jail fighting for my life. And that song, Someone Like You, kept playing on the radio. I'd go to court and in the bus, I'd hear it. I'd hear it from the officer's tower, blasting, echoing down the speakers. And it would just break my heart, man, those lyrics and just the melody. And that's my anthem now. I was doing the Stairmaster and just crushing it this morning. And that song came on the last 10 minutes. And I got emotional, man, because I remember a time when everyone quit and gave up on me. All my friends, my girlfriend at the time, everybody they thought my life was over and they just distanced themselves from me. And that was the moment I realized I had to fight and I had to be the one, to rebuild my life. No one was going to come to rescue me. And so that happened just this morning. I got emotional. I let out a howl. I was like, I'm here. I didn't quit. I didn't give up. And now I get to reap the benefits of not quitting and give it up and the life that I've created. So that's pretty cool. You opened up with that.
Yeah. So you said that it happened to you this morning. Yesterday, literally on my way home, I do my workouts late afternoon, where for us men, that's peak testosterone. And that just works out for my day to work out late afternoon. So I'm not early morning. I do other morning routine stuff early morning. I'm on my way home and I don't feel right. So I literally am at the decision point to turn into my gym, my personal training facility, or go home. And every fiber in my being saying, go home. And so I chose not to turn and I went home. But the promise I made to myself is because my body just, for whatever reason, did not feel right. I was like, I'm going for a 45-minute ruck. I'm going I'm getting at least that in. And sure enough, as soon as I get back from my ruck, I'm sweaty and I actually feel better. And I just start cranking out push-ups. Just start cranking out because it was the promise I made to myself. I'm going to get through at least a 45-minute ruck despite how my body feels, even though I didn't go to the gym. And at least I got my body moving and do something. And then I got back to the house. I'm like, I still feel good. All right, let's crank out some push-ups. And just did a couple sets of 100 push-ups. And just, then I was like, all right, now I feel good about my day. I didn't totally give up. So powerful.
I mean, it's crazy. Like most times when you don't want to do something like that, you end up feeling better. And I tell people all the time, I believe exercise is by far the most powerful habit we can form in our lives for the widespread benefits. It's psychological, it's spiritual, physically, everything will improve when you move your body, you get your blood flowing. And a lot of times we get so much clarity, at least I do, from those moments where oftentimes I won't work out with music and it's just me and my thoughts and no distractions. And you're getting your blood flowing, you're pushing yourself through something difficult. And that's where I've grown the most, man, over the last 10 years. And exercise really saved my life. I mean, I was battling addiction for so long because I had a lot of issues I hadn't dealt with. And when I got sober, finally, 10 years ago, I started working out every day. And at first, it was just to push through that like irritable feeling I was having, that anger, that angst. And then eventually, I elevated beyond that. And then I was building myself up. I was proud of myself. I started doing it daily. So I had discipline. And then over time, confidence. So, man, like you do leadership coaching, guys that move their body, guys that take pride in their physique and they're using that as a tool. They thrive in life. They carry that energy over to other areas of life as well.
Yeah, 100%. All right, man, let's get into it. I know I want to get into your story, but before we get there, let's meet you where you're at today. You ignited a self-mastery program for men. What is the vision behind the name of your mission that I completely butchered at the beginning? Unstoppable,
Yeah.
hashtag 365 mother effer.
Yeah. So it's about a year old, not even a year old. I've been doing coaching for roughly 4 years and even beyond. When I was in prison, I'd mentor guys. But I branded that name and created that company last year. The word unstoppable, I like that word. I think it represents me, my mentality, how I got to this point. Like the man who refuses to quit cannot be stopped. He's unstoppable. The only person that can stop you is yourself until you die. Like if you're dead, it's over. But until then, you still have a fighting chance. And that's the mindset behind it all. Like, what can I do? How can I overcome? You have to find a way, whatever that looks like. And then the 365 is what I believe, changed my life, is being put in an environment where I had to show up every day and do the work that resulted in me feeling okay. And what I mean by that is when you're stuck in a cell facing life in prison or doing an extended period of time in prison, every day you wake up and it's like torture. Your mind starts thinking about the worst case scenarios. You miss your family, you're hungry, you're around all these people you don't want to be around. There's bad things happening. It's just the worst. And so I started developing daily routines that help me to feel better, help me to tap into gratitude, help me to have clarity and a vision of what could be beyond the walls, help me to start feeling proud of myself. And I immersed myself in those daily actions every day. And when I did those things, I felt inner peace, I felt self-love, I had gratitude, and my whole energy was completely different. In fact, in prison, I started feeling the best I'd ever felt in my life. And it shocked me that I could experience those type of emotions in that internal state in that environment. But on the days that I didn't do the work, I didn't get up early, I didn't journal, I didn't read, I didn't self-reflect, I didn't pray, I didn't work out, guess what happened? That feeling was sucked out of me. I didn't have it. I felt the void instantly. And so I realized, man, I got to do this every day. I get to do this every day, and I think a lot of people shy away from the work because it feels daunting. It seems daunting, but what it does is it allows you to feel the way you want to feel. It's not work where there's no like result at the end. Like you get to feel the way you want to feel. You get to be happier, a better version of yourself around your family, just everything. So that's where the 365 comes into play, because a lot of the guys that will end up joining my program and want to work with me, they think this is something they can do 3 to 5 days a week. And I really want to hammer it home. Like, hey, I want you to focus on showing up as your best self, like your highest self, the man you want to be every day. How does he think? How does he talk? What is he doing? How does he approach people? Like, let's start cultivating that ultimate vision. And then every day is an opportunity to embody that man, to move one step closer towards that man. We're not perfect. Some days we come up short. Some days we make mistakes. That's okay. But it's the intention to show up 365 days a year as our best self. Like you putting on that, doing the ruck for 45 minutes. You had to do that. That's your best self. You couldn't break that promise. So it's those little things. And then the MFR is just to give it an edge. Like a lot of these guys that I coach, man, they've come off, a season of inactivity, a season of breaking promises, not feeling good about themselves, they kind of lost that edge, that chip on their shoulder. For
Yeah.
me, I'll always have a chip on my shoulder in a good way. Like, I'm not trying to put people down. I'm not a mean person, but I'm hungry. I'm motivated. You know what I mean? And so like that MFR is like, when you're pushing through that hard workout, when you're tired and you still got appointments to do, like whatever it is, when the kids are getting up in the middle of the night and you got to change diapers, it's that like motherfucker who's going to get up and get the work done. And so I just put together this long name, and that's the company, and that's the brand.
I love it. One of the things you said in there about the trigger to a question that I ask a lot of people that I coach, or even people that I have conversations with sometimes, and they ask me about a problem. And I ask them just this one tool, because you really touched on it, is what does your older, wiser self say about this situation? Or what would your older, wiser self do in this situation? Yeah. You can actually, that's a power that we all have that we can channel, but we choose not to. We choose to seek an outside source or an outside voice. So I can give you the answer, or you could go to your older, wiser self who probably already knows the answer. Because one of my favorite questions in the world is, what is the wise thing to do? And you had mentioned wise in there, and it started triggering these thoughts for me, because it's such an effective tool to be able to channel and ask our older, wiser self, hey, however you picture that person, let's say you're 35 and you're thinking of a 65-year-old version of yourself. Cool. Go ask that 65-year-old version of yourself, what's the wise thing to do right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's so good. I tell people that, hindsight is 20/20, but it doesn't have to be. Meaning you can have that same perspective shift or that same understanding now in the present, right? Like, by doing what you just did, it's taking yourself out of the situation, removing yourself from the emotional effect, or what you're feeling in the moment, how you're thinking in the moment, and ask yourself probing questions like you just did, that can get you to think and see things from a different angle. And I love that. And we all have the power to do that, but that's impulse control, that's self-regulation there. And a lot of people, they just can't do that. And the emotional effect of situations just clouds their vision. And now they're in a reactive state. And you're big on science and stuff that we talked about earlier, and that's like the fight or flight response, right? And a lot of people don't have the ability to kind of like slow that response down and see things from a different vantage point. For me, I think that's what prison really helped me with, because you do have a lot of time on your hands. And so you develop different perspective. You have to be patient. And also, if you react impulsively, you could get yourself in a really bad situation. So I got really good at thinking about what was happening and analyzing it and asking myself certain questions that led to different responses, or a different perspective in the moment.
So really, and your living hell became a place where you could form a superpower, which is awesome. So let's go back in time. You've alluded to it a couple times. I want everyone to hear this amazing story. You've said that you existed in a living hell from ages about 14 to 24. Tell our listeners about your start on this earth and your adolescent years that led you to prison, where you've alluded to a couple times.
Yeah, so growing up, I mean, I had a beautiful life. I grew up in Santa Barbara, California, right near the beach. And I loved playing sports. I loved surfing. I had a lot of friends, a lot of cousins. But my parents were battling addiction. And as I got older, I realized they were a mess. And, there started being incidents at home where I saw my mother overdose. I saw my parents fight. The cops would come. Like, all these bad things started happening. And my world went from a beautiful, world where the sun was shining, to a dark and gloomy world where it felt like, there was no sunshine and there was no hope for us. And this really, got worse at the age of 14, my freshman year in high school. My dad got arrested for having a pistol. He got in a standoff with the cops right in front of us in our neighborhood. And then after that, my mom slowly stopped coming home. Her drug habit got really bad, and she started, hanging out with friends, or she had a new boyfriend. She basically abandoned us. And that was the hardest for me, because I lost my dad and I knew he was in jail, but he loved us. He wanted to be there. He just couldn't do the right thing in life. So he's getting in trouble. He's getting all these situations. But my mom just left us. And for me, that broke my heart. And so I became a very angry and resentful person. And the only thing that helped me at that time to forget about my problems was smoking, drinking, taking pills. And I found very quickly that if I stayed numb, I would be in denial and I wouldn't have to feel the pain behind those incidents. So from 14 to 24, or really 14, through high school to 18, 20, 21, that's all I did. I just partied, got high, hung out with that crowd. And I never played sports in high school. I never tried. I didn't do anything I was proud of. I was just going through the motions down that same path so many people started on and never come back from. And in the midst of that, I saw so many people die, go to jail, lost family members. It was horrible. I didn't know anything else for me at the time, man. I didn't know that I could change or what to do to change, partly because my environment, but partly because I was so broken inside. And so when I was 23, I ended up being incarcerated myself. I was at a party in this really beautiful place of Santa Barbara. Like, if anyone's listening and you've been to Santa Barbara, it's this iconic little beach town, man. People come here from all over the world to visit. It's a tourist destination. So I'm at this party on these beachside cliffs. It's a college party. And all of a sudden, this huge fight breaks out. And I was way too close to the fight. I was right there watching. I wanted to see what happened. And I got pulled into the fight and I got tackled and I thought I was getting jumped and beat up by some guys. So I fought back and defended myself. And I didn't even really hit anyone in the fight. We were like wrestling around on the ground. And then I stood up. And when I stood up, I realized I was covered in blood. And in that moment, I realized something really bad had happened. I didn't know what happened. I just ran like everyone else did because I was scared. And so later that night, I was Googling, fight on the Mesa. And it turned out that 2 people had been stabbed at that party. And I didn't know in the fight that people were being stabbed. It was like a huge brawl taking place. But I knew with the amount of blood that was on me, something really tragic had taken place. And so the next day, I knew the cops were going to come and question me because I was involved in the fight. And I thought they were going to get me, try to get me to tell on people. They were going to try to press me for information. But when they arrested me, they came with the SWAT team, the dogs, the forensic unit, and they had these guys with AR-15s pointed right at me. And they charged me with attempted murder. And I was shocked, man. I was completely shocked. And when I got to the police station, they told me they were charging me for attempted murder, that they knew I had stabbed this guy. Everyone at the party saw me wrestling around, fighting with him. They found my blood-covered shirt. And it was something out of a worst case scenario, like a nightmare that you never could have imagined being in. Yeah. And so at 23, I was facing life in prison, literally for a crime that I didn't commit.
Man. So, I mean, so much to unpack there and all the feelings that you're going through, and you have at this time no parents to lean on, right? Did you have any adult figures that console you or help you in this scenario?
My Uncle Mike, who really stepped in and, raised my siblings and I when my parents were going through everything. He was there. He's been there my whole life. He would be checking in on us when we were younger. Then he ended up living with us. And then when my parents, my dad went to prison, my mom left us, he took care of us. So he was always there. And he knew the pain I was going through. He knew that I was broken. He would always remind me, man, hey, you're still that kid that used to play sports. You're still that kid I used to watch surfing. He was always trying to remind me of who I really was because he saw I was so lost. So then when that happened, at the party, he was coming to visit me. He was trying to speak up on my behalf, talk to my public defenders, get them to talk to the right people. He was doing everything he could. And man, it helped tremendously just to have his support and his belief in me, because I wasn't alone. I was confined and I was in jail cell. And as hard as it was, I still had that person that believed in me. So he was always there, man.
That's good. That is good, because I can imagine how lonely and scared and all this you feel, and you got no one to back you up if he's not there. So you're 23. You found your way to prison in what would be the longest 2008 days of your life, seemingly defeated and at the end of your road. If you could talk to, say, what age did you go into prison?
23.
20, so it was 23. Okay. So if you could talk to 23-year-old Sean today, what would you tell him?
I mean, before prison or after? I get asked that question a lot. And here's the truth, man. Like, I learned the hard way a lot in life. I had to really go through that. People might think that sounds extreme or crazy. First of all, I'm just extremely grateful that the guy didn't die who got stabbed. He was in a coma for 2 weeks. they did the defibrillators on him in the ambulance on the way to the hospital that night because he had his throat slit. They almost killed him. You know, he had a carotid artery, I believe that's how you pronounce it, literally like severed. And the fact that he survived is a miracle. I wouldn't be here, man, or I would have to go to trial, and it would have been a lengthy process. But my life at that point, I was so hopeless. I was so close to being dead. There's so many mornings I probably shouldn't have woken up because I took a handful of pills and I forgot, and then I drank a bunch of alcohol and I probably took more pills. Like I was just so self-destructive because I was so heartbroken inside. I didn't have any joy. I didn't have anything to live for. So I would just get high and party, and that was the only, that was the highlight of my life at that point. It was so pathetic. And so, man, prison, going to jail saved my life because now I was put in this concrete box where I was away from my old environment. And as crazy as this sounds, I was in this new environment where for the first time in my life, I could just think about what did Sean need? Like not having to go take care of my parents, not worried about if my dad was dead or what was happening to my mom. Like I did that my whole life. I took care of my siblings. I was like, I could never live for Sean. And so in that cell, I finally got to really like uncover my true self, man, and find out what I liked, who I wanted to be, who I didn't want to be, what I didn't actually believe in. And I just made some commitments in that cell. You know, I uncovered some hard truths about who I am at the core, what I want to do in this life. And something changed inside of me, man. I said, I'm never using drugs and alcohol ever again. I don't want to be like all these guys in here. That old lifestyle that my uncles and my dad used to glorify, I want nothing to do with it. That's not who I am. I'm an athlete. I want to educate myself. I want to be a good person, and I want to live a beautiful life. If I get a chance to do that, I'm all in. And so that's where the journey started in jail, like the third month, man. After the shock and awe wore off and I knew I wasn't getting out, I just made a commitment that I was going to utilize that time to my advantage and do whatever I could to better myself. And so I cut out all the things that would hold me back: drugs, alcohol, people, negative thoughts, behaviors. And every day I just started, stacking bricks, building wins. What can I do today to better myself? How can I, push myself today? What can I do in this cell? And then that was it, man. And that was like the beginning of my journey. It was push-ups, reading books, writing poems and creative writing in my jail cell to sharpen my mind. And that's where my journey started.
So what did you end up getting convicted with?
So I had pled guilty to assault with a deadly weapon. I was in county jail for 8 months fighting my case. The first day I went to court, my lawyer said, hey, they want to charge you with homicide. They don't think this victim's going to make it. He's still in a coma. The judge and the DA are over there talking about amending your charges. That was the first thing I heard. I was like, man, my life is over. I can't believe this is happening to me. And then miraculously, he survived. And so for 8 months, I was going back to court, trying to figure out what was going to happen. And the way that the court system in California is, they bring you back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And the judge and the DA are trying to, get the evidence, talk about what is an appropriate punishment. Are they going to give a plea deal? Or are they taking it to trial? Typically they offer a plea deal because going to trial is costly. And they're told like, hey, if you don't have to take it to trial, don't. So when they came to me and said, hey, we'll offer you 7 years, you have to admit guilt for this thing that you say you didn't do. You'll do about 6 years. In that moment, most people would think, gosh, that's forever. How could you accept that? But because of the transformation that I was experiencing internally, I felt that I could leverage that time in prison. And I just felt like it was the ultimate test. I felt like God was basically saying, here's this situation. You were going down this path. You were going to be dead, homeless, a miserable existence. I'm putting this in your path. If you can embrace this experience and you can overcome this challenge, you're going to get to live over here. You're going to get to have the dream life. You're going to get to be the person you've always wanted to be. This is it. I really felt like that. So I took the challenge head on and I told myself, I'm going to make this, the defining moment of my life. And when I come home, nothing's going to stop me. I'm going to overcome this. I'm going to live the ultimate life, man. And so it was because every day in my cell, I was attacking my routines. People don't understand, but like those daily routines change the way you think and feel. I would get up every day, fight off depression and anxiety by doing push-ups and burpees. I didn't want to do that stuff, but it helped me to be able to like breathe for a moment. Just like, okay, like I'm not freaking out right now. I just did 1,000 burpees. I'm exhausted, and then I would go on my bunk and read a book and write. And then I just started really falling in love with reading and writing. Before that, I never knew I was somewhat smart or intellectual. I thought I had street smarts. I was charismatic. I was athletic, but I always had this limiting belief that I wasn't book smart because I never applied myself. But I started learning and reading about all these different subjects, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with writing, and that helped me to discover a whole new version of myself. And I was like falling in love with the process of discovering who I really was, man. It was really intriguing to me. So despite what was going on in my life, despite being locked up in this cell, I was going through this internal transformation. It gave me hope that I could continue down that path and make that time valuable for me. And here's something I want to share real quick, because I've been thinking about this recently, and I alluded to it with the burpees in the cell. If you're going through something really difficult in your life, whether it's being locked up in a jail cell, maybe a slow month in business, maybe your kids are getting in trouble in school, whatever it is, there's a severity of stress that we experience. Some are like level 1 and 2, some are like 10, like through the roof. Like I can't, like being stuck in the cell facing life in prison. And what I found is if I go out and do something that's more difficult and demanding and poses more stress on me than that set of circumstances, I can deal with that stuff better. For instance, if I go do burpees until I'm so exhausted, I'm like, okay, I'm done doing burpees. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm cool to go back and sit on my rack now. You can get through so many tough times in your life. And like, for instance, doing cardio. I love cardio because if there's a stressful day in my life, I can go do cardio until I'm so exhausted. I'm like, I don't want to do cardio anymore. I'm okay to go back to that life I was stressed out in. And so it helps you to really push through those difficult times in life. And that's why I love exercise so much, because you like rise above it, So that's something I learned in those times in my life right there.
Well, there's also some science behind it because you're releasing the good chemicals that go into our brain.
Yeah,
right?
you're releasing all the dopamine, the endorphins, absolutely.
Yep. So it's a hack, if you will. I'll give you one exercise that I hate way worse than burpees, which is Turkish get-ups.
Oh yeah.
Turkish get-ups done the proper way are about 10 times worse than burpees.
Yeah, I mean, you're using every muscle fiber in your body, right? And you're using weight. I mean, anything that's going to challenge you, your cardiovascular system, challenge your muscles and your strength. I love it, And lately, I've been doing a lot of sauna and ice bath too, because I think that's a way that you can test yourself. You're in the sauna; it's like 30 minutes, and you're just ready to get out, and you push it a little longer. And the ice bath too. I mean, the amount of dopamine that's released post cold plunge, or testosterone growth hormone naturally in your bloodstream that stays elevated for 24 to 48 hours. That's a hack too. You do that stuff, and you're literally changing your biochemistry day by day.
Yep. And the calmness that you get out of it. Calmness is a superpower. You're talking about the emotions that people get into earlier, and how they react because they don't have that self-control over their emotions yet. That's why calmness is a superpower. And you want to develop calmness, put your butt in an ice bath and breathe through it.
Yeah. I did one yesterday. I showed my kids. Usually I'll go down to the Santa Barbara Athletic Club, and they have a sauna and a cold plunge, and I do rounds in there. Yesterday we were at home, so I just dumped a bunch of ice in the bath. And I did the temperature gauge, right? It was at 35 degrees. And I got in there, and they're just looking at me like, what is Dad doing? Because I was doing the breath work to maintain control of how I felt. And they were just, they were cracking up. They didn't know what I was doing. They're young. But like you said, man, if you can sit in freezing cold water and maintain control to not get out, because your instinct and reactive nature is to get out. That transitions into other parts of life. I think a lot of people, their impulse is to run from a problem, to run from adversity, or to react a certain way. And that's another reason I was thinking about this earlier when I was on the Stairmaster. Like, it was hard, and I was pushing myself, and I told myself, just one more minute. I can get through one more minute, just one more minute, kind of like Ed Milet, one more, right? But it's so true. And what you do, the more you do that, you train yourself. When something happens, when there's adversity, when there's stress, when you're uncomfortable, you don't run immediately. You kind of sit there and analyze for a second. And a lot of people in business or in life, when something gets uncomfortable, they run, they react, and they usually regret that impulsive decision. So things like cold plunge, things like intense cardio, where you can really train yourself to lean into that feeling of being uncomfortable. That's where that's where all the gems come from. That's where all the wisdom, that's where all the growth is acquired. So those are tools, man, that I learned a long time ago to utilize that have helped me through so much adversity, but then to come home and to really continue to create this life that I love so much that I get to live today.
Yeah. And I would say, just watching all your content and just hearing you speak today, right? You could have left prison so bitter. I mean, to be wrongly convicted for something you didn't do. I know, like, it takes a strong person to see the blessing in that and not leave broken, vengeful, bitter at the system, at life. Life's not fair, all the different stuff. But that would have just gotten your butt back into prison.
Yeah, most people, that's one of the biggest things that stands out to them is like, how are you not so angry and mad? And here's the truth. I felt guilty for the way I had lived my life. Like I felt this immense guilt for who I had become because it wasn't the person that I knew in my heart I could be. So when I got incarcerated, there was this guilt. There was like this shame about who I had let myself become. And that really affected me, that really affected me. And so I started making it right then so that I could be proud of who I was now. Like I was on this mission. I'm like, no, how did I let this happen? Like growing up, I had all these big dreams to be a professional athlete. I grew up in such a beautiful place with endless opportunities. How did I squander it? I was just dumbfounded because when I sat in that cell, I looked back on my life and I saw it as clear as day. I saw everything, man. I saw the truth and I felt it, the truth that I've been running from for so long. So I realized, man, I was in a fight for my life. This was pure survival. I can't waste a second being angry at people outside of my control. It doesn't matter what they think or what they're doing. I can't control it. So why am I going to sit here and think about it or waste energy on it? Literally every day, all my energy had to be channeled into the actions and thoughts that helped me to move forward in my life. And that's what I did. I just closed the door on that chapter of life of my parents, of my drug use, of my old demeanor, of my old friends. I just made peace with it. I accepted it. And I said, I'm moving forward. I get one life. I realize how short and temporary it is. I'm going this way. This is what I want to do. And I never stopped, man. And so I think for me and for a lot of people, we get hung up in the past and we dwell on things and it stops us from actually doing what we want to do in life. That was me for 10 years, recycling my pain over and over and over because I couldn't accept it and work through it. So it continued to harm me and I continued to abuse myself because I couldn't deal with it. And so I realized this when I was incarcerated and I thought, man, I can't do that to myself anymore. I have to be my greatest advocate in this life, not my worst adversary. And so I just made a promise and I kept it and I never stopped going in that direction.
I think that I think you're being humble is what I'm saying here, is because you could have painted a far different story and you chose not to. You had a divergence in the path, right? And you chose to close that book instead of go down the path of because the reality is you didn't have parents. You were broken. You could have blamed the system. You could have painted and kept just pounding that story into your head. And we know that wouldn't have led to any good spots, but a majority of people do that because they would rather play the victim than the victor. You chose the victor's path, which was the harder path to accept. And I just want to make that distinction for everyone because I think you're being very humble about it. And a lot of people, probably the majority of people, would have chose the other path because that was the story that was current and prevalent and real to them, because it was real to you. You didn't have parents, you were broken, but you chose a different path to be the victor.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, I felt like, my back was up against the wall. And like you said, I had a choice to make. I chose the hard route, man. It was the hard route. It was believing on myself and believing in this vision or this life or this feeling inside of me that I couldn't see and no one knew about. That's hard to do. The alternative was, yeah, like you said, to complain about it, to be a victim, to continue to get high, to blend in with the crowd and fit in with the guys in prison, and just do my time. And I would have got out and I would have been a mess if I got out, So I feel like I made the harder choice, but it was the right choice. And I'm grateful I did.
Yeah, I'm grateful you did too, brother. All right, let's talk about some of the beautiful things in your life now. Your children aren't at the age yet, but they will be before you know it, as all of our kids. I'm sure you were told this as well. Like I was told when I first had my first child, is the days are long, but the years are short. And now you got a 12-year-old and I got an almost 12-year-old, and then, younger kids beyond that. And I don't know about you, but I can't imagine I got an almost 12-year-old already, because she was just this big yesterday in my mind. But anyhow, they're going to be there before you know it. As a father reflecting back on this chapter of your life that we just talked about, what is the most important thing that you did not receive as a child that you now prioritize for your children?
Man, I mean, all the pain of not having what I needed is what drives me to be the best father, the best leader, the best man for them today. One of the things that stands out the most, well, there's two. My dad could never get sober, and all I wanted, man, was for him to be sober, because he was a really good person when he was sober. He had a lot of charisma and a lot of love, and he always showed us love, but he had this dark side, and when he drank, it came out, and he caused a lot of pain and chaos in our lives. So I'm so grateful that I am sober, and my children will always know me as that man, and I can be an example for them in this crazy world where people are just, using drugs and just doing all this crazy stuff. And then keeping promises. My dad would always make promises about places we were going to go, things he was going to do or we were going to do together, and he wouldn't do it. And so my goal every day is to talk to my children, listen to them, but then do exciting stuff with them too. Like we go to all these fun places, even if it's just down to the beach or to the lake to look at the turtles, to feed the ducks. Like every day, I want them just to have excitement and feel loved and feel loved and to feel special. And I just know when children are growing up, if they feel loved and they're nurtured properly, man, they grow up with such a strong belief in who they are. And this, like, it's like a superpower growing up versus people that you see feeling like they didn't have that love and they feel a lacking or their self-worth is compromised. So keeping the promises and being sober and just being the example for them each and every day. I always tell them I love them. I tell them I'm proud of them, and especially running a business, especially being on my phone a lot. I'm now more than ever, because my youngest ones, 2 and 3, are being more aware that when we're there talking or doing something, that they're getting my attention. I'm looking them in the eyes. I'm not glancing at my phone while I'm listening, because what message am I sending to them that this is more important than them? So I'm just being more aware now than ever to be present with them, to not be looking at my phone, and to give them. And that sounds like common sense, obviously, but gosh, man, when you get 450 messages a day and you're growing your business and you're hungry as an entrepreneur and I want to take care of them, I want to give them the dream life, it can be challenging. So, right now more than ever, that's my priority for them. And I feel like I'm doing a pretty dang good job at it, but it's something that I don't want to ever slip and look back on my life and be like, man, you chose your phone and social media and business over like listening to your daughter, your son. That would just break my heart.
Yeah. And I've had those moments. I'm thankful for my 9-year-old. If she wants my attention, and even if I say 1 second, honey, she'll push my phone down.
Yeah. And see, my daughter will start to do that. And that it makes me sad. Man, we know it's hard because we're doing certain things for them, for our lives. Like we can't just not work. So for me, I'm just trying to get that stuff done before I'm around them. And if I do have to answer a message, it can wait, or I can wait till they're done talking. Because my daughter will do the same thing. She's almost 4, but she'll do the same thing. And that makes me a little sad. I'm like, gosh, she knew in that moment that I wasn't paying attention to her, and I got to be better than that. So it's something we're never going to be perfect at, but I'm always going to give my best effort.
Yeah, here's a shocking stat for folks. The average American touches their phone 2,700 times per day. So then go and think about, okay, how many of those times am I touching my phone in front of my kids instead of watching them, engaging them, telling them I love them, all those different things. All right. So I hope that stat shocks most people like it did me. And then you ask yourself that follow-up question is, how many times am I touching that phone in front of my kids instead of giving them my undivided attention? Because we're not promised tomorrow. So
So,
I
so good.
really like your lessons too there, because you are the example, right? I am the example. You are the example. So you being sober is the example. You being in badass shape is the example to your kids. You loving on your wife is the example to your daughter on how she should be treated and how your son should treat a woman, right? So you are the example. So I love that as well. And I want everyone to land that point home. So similar vein, you were born in a house, or home lacking consistent leadership, but now are a multiplier of leaders nationwide. And you just think about this, from prison to entrepreneurship, where did you begin to just, like, beyond the prison walls to now just leading men to be better versions of themselves? Where did you evolve and just lean into, this is what I want to do and give back to the world, give this gift back to the world?
Yeah, I mean, you want to know something really cool? I might have one by here. Actually, I don't. I just found a box of old journals from prison, and it's really amazing to go back and read them from 2014, 2015, and just seeing the transformative process I was going through, to read it. And so I knew early on when I was going through this transformation that I'd found something special in myself. And I knew I wanted to share it with the world somehow, some way. I didn't know what that looked like. I just felt the changes I was going through were so impactful, and the way that I could feel while I was incarcerated, that I could really share something beautiful or help people in some way out here. Because I knew a lot of people that were struggling, man. And so during my time in prison, I just was head down, focused on work every day. I was working out, I was taking college courses, I was reading books, I was immersed in my growth, my personal development. It was very self-centered, me, me, me. And I had to be that way because I was rebuilding myself. And then after about 3 years, a lot of guys started coming up to me, asking me questions about the books I was reading, the workouts I was doing, the college courses. They were intrigued by my daily conduct because I wasn't like most guys in prison. I had a positive attitude. I was motivated. I was very disciplined, and they could just tell I was different. And so I started working with a lot of these guys. I started exercising with them, helping them to get in better shape, showing them books that I had found the most value in that they could read or get sent in. And I even helped some of these guys enroll in the college correspondence program I was in. And so in the midst of that, I saw these guys start to change before my eyes. Their demeanor would change, their energy. They'd start to feel a little happier, a little more proud of themselves. They'd smile more. They'd start talking about life beyond the walls differently instead of going back to the old neighborhood or the old job. Like, what if I could do this? Like, what if I can do something different? Their perspective was changing. And in that moment, I realized, wow, this is amazing. Because I've worked so hard to change myself, I can now help these guys make the same changes in their lives. And in that moment, I knew that was my purpose. I wanted to come home. I wanted to coach people. I wanted to show them what I've done to change so they could, number one, find the joy in their lives and love who they are. Like, I just want guys to be able to look in the mirror, like, I'm proud of you, man. I love this guy that I'm looking at. Like, look at his physique. He's being a good father. He's being a leader for his family. Like, I want guys to feel that, and then just helping them with everything. What are the habits? What are the mindset? How do you actually change? I was lucky. I was stuck in a box with no distractions, so I could analyze myself. I found all these shortcuts, all these hacks, and it's not new information. It's the stuff you see all the other coaches, and I'm sure that you teach. But because of where I come from, because I didn't quit and give up, because of my life now, they know it works. They're like, dude, it must work. Look at what Sean's doing. Like, maybe I can find that type of joy in my life, or get out of this rut I'm in, or just level up a little bit in some facet. So when I came home, I started sharing my story on social media, started being honest about where I'd come from, what I'd learned, how I had changed, and I never stopped. And then when COVID shut all the gyms down, that's when I created some online coaching programs, and it really started taking off with a lot of guys who were battling depression, having no routines, bad habits. It was affecting their mindset. It was affecting their marriage. Now they want to drink. Now they're not working. They're eating too much. They're gaining weight. Like, all these negative things. And so that's when it really took off. And from there, I've never looked back.
Oh, that's great. That is awesome. And you're having a huge impact. All right, we're almost running up on time, so I want to continue asking a few more questions. I had some thoughts there, but we'll move on. The term self-love has been trending more than ever, probably since, let's say, the start of the pandemic. Explain to our listeners why discipline is the ultimate act of self-love.
Yeah, I mean, discipline is an act of self-love because oftentimes the easy thing in the moment, the shortcut in the moment, actually makes your life worse in the long run. If I want to go eat McDonald's right now because it tastes good and it's convenient, and I do that every day, I'm going to gain weight. My blood pressure is going to go through the roof. I could develop diabetes. I'm not going to feel good. And not to mention all that crap you're putting in your body and how it affects your neurotransmitters and your mental health. So that act right there, it's an easy thing to do, but long term, it makes my life worse. Versus, let's say, cardio at 5 a.m. Do I want to get up at 4:30 and do cardio? Is it pleasant? Am I comfortable doing it? No. But if I get up every morning and do fasted cardio, the benefits long term for my health and my mental health are widespread. So that's a difficult act, but having discipline to do it, what I'm saying is, I know this is tough in the moment, it's difficult, but long term, it's going to enhance the quality of my life. So you need discipline to do the hard things, because we don't just want to do them, that are going to make your life better in the long term. Otherwise, you're going to pick the easy route, the comfortable thing, and your life is going to get worse in the long term. Okay. If you sleep in every day, you don't read any books, you don't educate yourself, you don't work out, you eat a bunch of bad food, you drink soda because it's convenient and tastes good. Like, where are you going in life, man? But if you get up early and you work out, you discipline yourself with what you're eating, you educate yourself, like you do these things that are tough in the moment, but you have the discipline to do it because you love yourself. You care about your life and what's happening to you. So you're going to do the tough stuff now that's going to continue to better your life in the future. That's what it means. And if the listeners, and I'm sure a lot of them do this, because look at you, you're a leader, man. This is what you teach. But if you guys just focus on that, and every day you do the stuff that's difficult, but that's going to better your life in the future, you'll end up falling in love with that process, and you'll never go back to that old life. Like, I could never just sleep in, get up, like order some Big Mac, or what are they, Egg McMuffins, watch TV all day, drink some beer, like eat some Jack in the Box for dinner. Like, I couldn't even do that one day. I would just, I wouldn't. And some people live that way and they wonder why they're not happy and they don't have any. You would. And so, man, my whole thing is mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, with my family. I want to be thriving. And I can't do that if I'm not in control of this. And so when I'm in control of this, forcing me to do these things that improve the quality of my life, then everything around me starts to improve. And now I'm like, wow, I feel good. I'm happy. I'm proud of myself. It's not easy to create that life, but it's damn worth it.
Yep, 100%. Jocko's famous line, discipline equals freedom, is spot on to with what Sean is saying here. Is a lot of times we think of discipline like from a disciplinary standpoint from our parents or teachers or coaches, when in actuality, it's an action that we create ourselves that creates that freedom. So really good. There's some actionable stuff in there, but I always want to make sure we leave our audience with as much actionable takeaways as possible. It would be really nice if we were all born with a silver spoon in our mouth, but that is far from the reality of the world we live in. And frankly, I've met quite a few people throughout my life, or grew up with some people that had a silver spoon in their mouth, and they've turned out to be some awful adults. And those that haven't, like yourself, have turned out to be some pretty amazing human beings. So what motivation can you share with listeners who are feeling they were dealt a bad hand, are at a disadvantage, or have the cards just stacked against them in life?
I mean, I tell people you're at an advantage, right? So stop looking at your past for the things that didn't go to your liking as a negative, and look at them as a positive that can be a catalyst for you to want more, to do more, to strive for more. Like, because of the pain I went through in the past and having those years of my life taken away, I wanted so much more. Like, my whole life was almost taken away from me, and it made me love life and want these opportunities that much more. Growing up with parents who are battling addiction, I want to be the best dad. Having my heart broken by my ex-girlfriend because I neglected that relationship, I want to be the best husband for my wife now and treat her like a queen because that's what she deserves, because I didn't do that in the past. So, like, all the stuff that caused me pain in the past, in my mind, I turned it into an asset that now allows me, because I have perspective now. I know that pain. I don't want to do that to myself again. So naturally, I'm going to do it the right way. I'm going to make my life better because of that. So if you're listening and you feel like you've been at a disadvantage, or things aren't going your way, good. Like, that's where the tests are going to sharpen you. That's where you really find out how strong and capable you are. But you have to dig deep. You have to dig deep, and you have to find that strength from within. And I promise you, like I share all the time, if you never quit or give up and you just keep going, you keep learning, you keep growing, man, you're going to have a life by design one day that you absolutely love. And then you're going to look back and realize, wow, it was all those tough moments and all the hardships I went through that drove me harder to get to this point. And I feel bad for people, honestly, that grow up having things gifted to them and making it easy on them because they don't have to develop the internal attributes, the willpower, the determination, the discipline, the desire to want that life. Like they don't have to develop those attributes, and they don't really get as far ahead as they could in life because of that. So if you guys have ever felt like you're at a disadvantage, stop talking to yourself that way, right? You got to change the narrative and realize those things could be a catalyst for growth you never would have had otherwise.
And opposite of that, if you grew up like I did, moderately privileged, we were upper middle class, understand the advantage that you had and don't ever let it go. Work harder to leave a bigger legacy than your parents gave you. Just because Sean went through some tough shit and some other people that I've had on here from, by the way, has your path ever crossed with Damon West?
No, I've heard his name. I've seen some of his stuff, but I've never got a chance to meet him.
Incredible story. You guys got to meet it sometime. Hopefully, maybe I can make that connection for you guys. But just some incredible stories that if you've listened to Spartan Leadership, you've seen some people that have gone from prison. Brad Modrich was another one that you and I both know that was in prison, is now living an incredible life with an incredible family. So just because you grew up with an advantage doesn't mean that you can't achieve these great things either. In fact, you just say you have a leg up. So now just to actually move forward towards those goals and ambitions that you have and leave a bigger legacy than your parents ever left you. So I just want to give both sides there because you can frame it either way, victim or victor, advantage or disadvantage. It's how you frame it in the story you tell yourself is what you're going to go forward with. And the important piece is from the advice Sean just gave you and my additions, like the fact is it's in your control through discipline, through action, through believing in yourself and surrounding yourself with the right people. And whether it's getting coached by either Sean or I, joining our masterminds, whether it's, getting involved with someone else that you really respect and like put those people around you, act every day with discipline and achieve your dreams. So
100%.
Final question, brother. I never prep anyone for it unless you've listened to the show in the past, but I'm always curious as to the answer that our guests come up with. What's an unpopular belief that you hold to be true that most others would disagree with?
Ooh, this is a good one. I mean, I got some haters for this one. I put out a video a while back, and this might not be unpopular, but people don't want to talk about it. How like obesity is such a problem, right? And so if you have an individual who's obese and fat and out of shape, someone asked me like, Sean, would you hire that guy for your company? Would you like put him on the payroll? And I said, no, like I looked for a guy who was in shape, who took care of himself. And people thought that was me being cruel and rude because I said I wouldn't hire an obese person. I said, look, man, the way you take care of yourself, the food you eat, if you move your body or not, like that reflects on like so much that you feel about yourself internally. How are you going to show up and work and do a job if you can't even take care of yourself? So that was a belief that maybe some people wouldn't put out there, like, hey, obese people are not fit to do a good job at work and do a good job raising children and do a good job in other aspects of life, because I think they have something just like I did in the past that's broken internally that they need to fix. There's no difference from me taking a bunch of pills and drinking alcohol than the person who's obese overeating all this unhealthy food. It's a coping mechanism. It's a maladaptive coping mechanism. So I look at people who are obese as people who need help. We need to support them, but we need to talk about it more. A lot of people are like scared to offend somebody because they're fat and out of shape. Like, no, tell them that's not okay. You're better than that. Your children need to see a better man or version of you. And it's going to limit the opportunities to get in life, because if you're not taking care of yourself, how do you think all these opportunities are going to materialize? It doesn't work that way. So I hope that answered your question. And
no, I freaking love it.
Well, here's the thing. People are scared to say that. It's not me saying I hate fat people. It's me saying, hey, if you're fat, get your ass in shape because it's going to improve your life. And it's unacceptable. You're better than that. And people are like, oh my gosh, you can't say that. It's like, dude, I'm not saying the person's a POS be just because, but their habits are leading them to have a life that's lesser quality than they deserve.
No, and you're spot on. So the thing that, at first when you said it, I could be like, okay, I can understand some people judging you for that. Here's what struck a chord with me when you mentioned the kids. because I live in Wisconsin, and in Madison, it's a really healthy city. We get rated in the top, healthy cities often, but the state as a whole is very unhealthy. We're known for drinking beer and eating cheese and bratwurst. So literally our habits in Wisconsin are not healthy. Fish fries on Friday, old fashions, sugary drinks. Like, we're not a healthy state as a whole. And the biggest thing that I see, and this is what struck a chord with me, is you have morbidly obese parents and their less than 10-year-old kids are already morbidly obese.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is child abuse. Like, you are setting them up for a life of problems.
It is. I put out a video recently, and it was kind of like a joke, but not really. I said, dude, if I was president, I would put those parents in jail. Like, I would put them in jail for child neglect. You can't do that to your children, Would I really do that? I don't know, but I think the government or somebody should intervene, because the thing that breaks my heart, I was just at this place called Jump and Jammin' this weekend with my children, and there's all these levels you climb up, slides. It's like an indoor gym for younger kids. They can jump around and play. And I'm talking about kids who are 4 and 5 years old, obese, like visibly fat and out of shape, out of breath, can't play, can't climb on these structures. And I look at their parents, and I want to say something. Maybe I should, man, because what they're doing to their children is setting them up for a life of misery, to be at a massive disadvantage, both physically. They're going to shorten the lifespan that they have. They're going to lead to all these preventable physical ailments. But imagine this person, this kid growing up, self-conscious, can't play like the other kids, doesn't fit in. Maybe they're made fun of, maybe they're bullied, all because their parents were lazy or ignorant or just didn't care, and they let them eat whatever the hell they want and didn't teach them how to live a good life. That's unacceptable, man. And I think there needs to be a punishment for that. I really do. I don't know. There'd have to be some type of consensus, but I think it should be addressed at the very least.
Well, you know why there's not a punishment is because our government wants us fat and overweight, obese, because it makes us lifetime consumers of their processed foods, of the big pharma industry, of all the stuff that lines their pockets, because, we're going to have to get on that diabetes drug, or we're going to have to get on a cholesterol pill or a blood pressure pill if we continue down that path. So our current political overlords are not going to punish any of those parents like you or I would, because that's what they want. They want to continue lining the pockets of their buddies that line their pockets.
Yeah. And that's why it's up to us to be real leaders, man, and show people like the right path, the right way to live, because you can't expect the government or even teachers at school or anyone else to do it. I mean, most individuals in society right now are living a pretty weak and soft life. And the guys like you and Brad and these other people we mentioned earlier, Andy, I know Ed, all these guys that you work with, they're few and far between. So I take it as a responsibility and an honor to be a good man, a leader, and show my kids what leads to a healthier, happier life, and to show the men I coach so they can be that way for their families as well.
Yeah, I love it. All right, man, this has been such a good conversation. Where can everyone follow you if they want to book you to speak, get a part of your mastermind, or just follow you because they liked our conversation today? Where's the best spots?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Sean M. Crane, SEAN .M.Crane, CRANE. Or you can look me up on Facebook as well. It's Sean Michael Crane. That's my full name. But just send me a message. I'm always here to support people. I'm fortunate that I get to travel and speak often, share my story, share my message. I get to coach men all over the world who want to improve their mindset, their habits, and how they show up for their families and life in general. So, always here to support people. You can reach out and ask me anything.
I'm gonna connect you and Damon because you guys need to know each other. Both great dudes that have a similar story to tell. All right, brother. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Spartans, you know what to do. Hit that share button. And as always, remember, good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.